For more, I want to bring in CBS News reporter Mary Ilyushina. Mary, Russian President Vladimir Putin has declared martial law in annexed regions of Ukraine, as we've said twice already. What more do we know, and what does it entail?
Good morning, Vlad and Anne-Marie. Yes, he opened his meeting today with the Security Council saying that this martial law will be introduced. It's kind of legally hard to comprehend because those territories have been illegally annexed. Russia does not control them fully politically or militarily. They're losing ground in a lot of them, especially now in the southern Kherson region. But essentially, Putin says we're up to a really difficult task. They need to clean this area and claim this land fully. So he did not elaborate exactly what this martial law would mean and also what it would change de facto on the ground. But under Russian law, that allows the Russian military, law enforcement, a pretty wide set of possibilities. What they can do, they can seize civilian property, they can stop people for checks, they can limit their movement in however they want, they can introduce a curfew, they can potentially, take cars from people and do a lot of things that they were technically were not able to do before. But it still remains to be seen how exactly that will change or advance their claim to these territories.
So, Mary, this sort of latest spate of Russian strikes, the strikes and the drone sort of attacks, though they appear indiscriminate at times because civilian targets have certainly been hit, it's clear that Russia is also focusing on infrastructure, in particular, power infrastructure. How concerning is this for Kyiv and other cities as we head into the winter?
That's extremely concerning. There were reports of power outages in Kyiv and a lot of other cities because Russia is targeting these infrastructure sites that are very crucial for civilians to survive the winter. And this has been sort of a tactic, and something that I think Moscow has been looking forward is to hold over until winter, because it will be much more difficult for Ukrainians to fight in the winter if a lot of the cities remain without electricity connection or heating. It will also be very difficult for civilians to power through this. And overall, this kind of war of attrition that Putin has been betting on since the summer is definitely now will be put to a test. The question is whether this is going to be sustainable for Russia, because we know last week they used a lot of very expensive missiles. There are estimates that they spent millions of dollars on these strikes that really did not hit a lot of military targets, but actually hit this infrastructure. And this week we're seeing a lot of drone strikes because some experts think they're trying to save up money because this is not really sustainable going forward. So whether this is the critical mass of the attacks right now or they will continue for some time in the future, that's again up to how many drones Russia have and how many Iran will supply. But it's definitely very concerning for Vladimir Zelensky, who needs to sort of preserve the population in a more or less heated conditions as the winter is approaching.
Kherson is, of course, one of the 4 regions illegally annexed by Russia. Officials there say they will help people evacuate as fighting intensifies there. So what is Russia preparing for?
Yes, and they don't really have an option to go anywhere else but Russia. That's the concerning part about it, that there are Ukrainian citizens there who would potentially want to go somewhere else, but they don't really have an option because there is a pretty heavy fighting on the sort of western bank of Dnieper River, and Russian authorities said they are going to evacuate a lot of people, about 50 to 60,000 people from this area deeper into Russia, as they've said. Because they are bracing for a pretty big counteroffensive from the Ukrainian side. And this is what the Russian newly established sort of overall commander, Sergei Surovikin, said yesterday, that the situation is really tense and they might have to, take really unpopular decisions, which could signal that Russia will withdraw potentially, but they will put up a fight before that happens.
All right, Mary Ilyushina, thank you so much, Mary.